Welcome to the Nash podcast, brought to you by the Village Hotel Club. Today we've got Mark Bradshaw on the podcast. Mark, you must be happy we're back into the swing of things now.
Yeah, from the minute the season finished, I started planning for this season. So it's been a really busy summer. It's my first experience of what it's like for a manager out of season. It's not easy. A lot of phone calls, a lot of being prepared to run about and go and meet people and talk to people and basically sell them the Curzon, way of thinking and what we're planning for next year. So it's been a really busy period, but I'm excited for what's ahead in the coming season.
So probably the best way to start telling your story, if we go back to when obviously you was born in Ashton, what did you do when you was a kid? Whereabouts did you play?
Well, first and foremost, it was at school. School teams. I played from a young age, and a lot of the time at school I was playing, year above or 2 years above. And people spotted that I had a natural talent for football from an early age, which is obviously a sport that I loved. At the same time as well, I was at a primary school where table tennis was a real... we had a teacher that played in an adult team, so he loved football and table tennis, so he pushed both sports. And we had a really talented table tennis team.
Yeah, that's probably something people don't know about you as well, that you played, before we touch on football, you went to quite a high level with table tennis as well, didn't you?
It was, well, I was playing in an adult league when I was 10 years old, and I never lost one game.
Yeah.
I never really took it seriously, in all honesty. I was Tameside champion 4 years on the run. I won the Greater Manchester Championships. I won the North West England Championships, and I went to the national finals 1 year, and that's when I got found out, really, because it was just something that I enjoyed doing. It wasn't something I was taking very seriously.
Yeah.
It's just it was a really enjoyable pastime that. The teacher that I had, he started us playing at sort of 8-9 years old, and before my 10th birthday I beat him, and he was devastated. But there was 2 or 3 others who were talented as well, and as a team, we never lost a game in sort of three years of table tennis. The issue came when he started pushing me to sort of represent higher level table tennis, and it was clashing with football, and I knew I had to make a choice, and the choice was very straightforward. Certainly my true love is football. Always has been, always will be. So under 11s, playing for Ashton boys and then Tameside boys, and then continuing that at senior school, representing Tameside boys early, and I think I was about 12, 13, playing for Tameside boys under 14s when the first scout approached me. In them days, that was when scouts sort of started looking.
Yeah.
And it was Manchester United who came first. And I didn't really knew how it worked.
Did you go on trial?
It weren't trials there. They sort of invited me into a training session to train there twice a week at the Cliff.
Yeah.
So I was going down to the Cliff twice a week. Growing up, I did have an affection, and I'll admit it, and I get a lot of stick for it in them days, that I did like Liverpool as a football team, because they were winning everything basically at the time. But eventually my true colours came out, and I was a City fan when I realised that you should support your local team, and ever since then I've always had my eye on City, even though I haven't been able to always go to the games or anything just because of my own career. But United came calling first, then City, then quite a few other teams. So I actually, in them days, you could sign schoolboys from being 14 years old. I never signed any schoolboy forms. I just...
Did you get offered them? And
yeah, from several clubs, from United, from City, from Tottenham, from West Brom, Oldham, Preston, Blackpool, lots and lots of teams, Bury. So I was basically going around just training with them and just enjoying the training, enjoying what I was doing. I went through the process again, like it's similar to table tennis, where it was Tameside boys, then Greater Manchester boys, and North West England boys, and I did get called up to the England schoolboys squad, but unfortunately I was withdrawn from the squad basically because of my behaviour at school.
Already.
That it wasn't great, and I was a little bit of a rebel at school. I was, teachers would say to me, get on with your work, and I had a sort of bad attitude in terms of saying, well, I don't need to do this work because I'm going to be a footballer. And obviously teachers will say, do you know how many people make it at football? And I'll say, yeah, well, I'm going to be one of them. I didn't make it as high as I'd have liked, but I sort of proved them wrong because I've been involved in football.
So how did it come about? You went to Blackpool's youth side, right in saying?
Well, it came about with a lad who was at school with me, who again was another talented footballer. He started playing for a team on a Sunday called Nova Juniors, and they had a really good reputation around the northwest of England, basically, of being a strong team. And the guy who run it was a Blackpool scout, and he saw what I was doing, and the fact that I was getting a lot of attention, and he asked me to play for them. So I started playing for them on a Sunday, and he was always sort of taking me across to Blackpool in school holidays to train with them, and I'd occasionally go, I can't go there because I've agreed to go down to City for 2 days, or I went down to Tottenham quite a few times. They always took my parents with me, and so it was sort of like working other clubs around him taking us down to Blackpool. But I did always enjoy Blackpool because you got really close to the first team.
Yeah. How long was you at Blackpool before you made that transition into the first team?
Well, I started going when I was about 14.
Yeah.
I made my debut at sort of 17, and I ended up leaving the club I was 22, I think.
Yeah.
So I had quite a time at Blackpool, and I learnt a lot in that period of living over in Blackpool for 3 or 4 years, and then travelling over the rest with our car that travelled over from Manchester. Had Alan Wright in it, who went on to play for Aston Villa and Blackburn. It had Steve Morgan, who played for Wigan and Coventry, and now I think he's full time at Accrington Stanley. So we had Trevor Sinclair in it for a while, who had a really good career and played for England. So it was a good car school to be in.
Yeah, definitely.
And in them days the motorways were a little bit quieter, so it was an hour there, hour back, and we did that for a couple of years. So it was a good period.
Yeah, I was doing some digging on Wikipedia, and it said you managed to get 1 goal whilst he was at Blackpool. Do you remember that one?
Wikipedia's wrong. I scored more than one. I think I didn't score many, but my first goal was in the Littlewoods Cup, or League Cup, Worthington Cup, whatever you want to call it. It changes its name every year, and that was at Burnley away.
Was that your first goal, like senior
That was
goal?
my first
What
senior
was that
goal.
like?
It was at Burnley. They were 2-legged in them days, and I think we drew at Blackpool 0-0, and that was the winning goal. We beat Burnley at Burnley 1-0, and it was a free kick from about 30 yards where somebody just basically tapped it to me to cross it really, because it was from like not wide but just off centre, and I just hit it. And I'm not sure if it was because it was such a good shot or because the keeper was slightly in a bad position, but it just flew over his head into the roof of the net.
The rest is history.
So, yeah, the rest was a blur of me celebrating my first senior goal, and I think I scored about 3 or 4 for Blackpool, but Wikipedia is wrong. I definitely made more appearances and scored more goals than they've got me down for.
So after Blackpool, am I right in saying you went on to Stafford Rangers?
Yeah.
What league were they in at the time?
In the National League.
National League.
You know, it was called the Conference at that time.
What was that like there?
It was an eye opener because my time at Blackpool was coming to an end. A manager called Billy Ayre got me in at the beginning of the season and said I'm not really in his plans, and that I needed to go out and get, you know, some football, some experience to try and make sure I get a move. And so I went out on loan to Stafford. When I signed for them, I didn't know who Stafford Rangers were. I didn't know what league they were in. I think it happened sort of like, I think it was like October time, something like that. And I agreed to go because I was desperate to play football. I wasn't, you know, I'd done pre-season at Blackpool. He told me I wasn't really in the plans, so I agreed to a move without even knowing where Stafford was. There was no mobile phones or anything in them days where you got instant information and everything. So I came out of the office with a Stafford manager's phone number. He said, "Come to training Tuesday night." And sorry, it was actually a game. You registered. Come Tuesday night for the game. So I hadn't trained with them or anything.
So you went straight into like playing for them?
Straight in, yeah. And when I got there, I still didn't know. I'd found out where they were and what league they were in, but I didn't know anything other than that night they were playing Wycombe Wanderers at home.
Yeah.
So I got there, looked at the programme first thing in the dressing room after the introductions, and noticed that Wycombe Wanderers were in first place and Stafford Rangers were bottom of the league. So at the time, Wycombe Wanderers had Martin O'Neill as manager, had several players who went on to do really well. You know, Martin O'Neill took them to Leicester, Steve Guppy, people like that. And, you know, I was like, oh, right, so we're bottom.
Did you go down that season when you first went there?
No, they never went down while I was there. They
saved them.
Well, I went on loan for 3 months, and in the 3 months, I think we lost maybe 1 or 2 games. So we were bottom when I came. Yeah. We beat Wycombe Wanderers that night in a really good game, and I thought, I was expecting, even though Stafford Rangers was only 1 league lower than Blackpool at the time, you know, you get this stigma of, oh, it's non-league. You know, there isn't any good players there, and it was a real eye-opener because Wycombe Wanderers were professional at the time. They had a lot of players who were going to go on to play higher, and 1 or 2 for England. And then the Stafford Rangers team had some outstanding players in it, and I took to it and I really enjoyed it. And in the 3 months, I made an impression where they come back for me when that season finished to sign there full time. I actually left after the 3 months to go on loan at York City. So I had a period at York, and York offered me a deal, and Stafford offered me a deal for the next season.
Was York in the same league at that point? Or?
York was in Blackpool's league, so they were in the, you know, they were full time in the.
So what made you choose Stafford?
The deal that they offered me. You know, I had a really good time there. And they offered me more money part-time than York did full-time. Yeah. Which I'd still wanted to remain in the league, but I thought, you know, with the experience I'd had at Stafford, where I'd played so well, I'd enjoyed it, I thought it would be the best option for me. So I signed a 2-year deal there, and you know, and ended up staying 5 years and we never got relegated in them 5 years.
Yeah, because you played a lot of games whilst you were. So did you avoid injuries and stuff during the time there?
Well, I had little niggles, and throughout my career, I was really lucky that I didn't have any major injuries. It was only things that would keep me out for 2 or 3 weeks. So I was really fortunate. But at Stafford, yeah, I pretty much played 5 seasons, week in, week out. We had some success. We had a few struggles. We had a couple of cup runs where we knocked league opposition out, and then we had a couple of cup runs where lower sides knocked us out. So it was a real good learning curve at Stafford Range. I really enjoyed my time there.
Yeah. So after that, you moved to Macclesfield.
Yep.
How did that one come about?
Well, we were actually playing Macclesfield on Boxing Day, and again, the top of the league to the bottom of the league. Macclesfield were top, and Stafford were in the relegation zone. They were struggling. A lot of things were changing at the club, and quite a few of the players who I'd played with over the last few years were leaving, and we went to Macclesfield thinking, we're going to struggle here. Macclesfield were flying, and we beat them 1-0. And even though I was really ill before the game, I was full of flu, and I weren't sure whether to play or not because I had the shivers and the shakes and everything. But I thought, I don't want to miss a game, so I played. We won 1-0, and just as I was going out of the car park, their assistant manager just pulled me and said, we're interested in you coming here, would you be interested? So I said yes straight away, because Macclesfield's a lot closer to Manchester, and like I say, Stafford was starting to show signs that it wasn't quite the same. So I said yes straight away, and Macclesfield pretty much contacted Stafford about a week later and took me to Macclesfield. Almost straight away. I think they paid about £5,000 for me or something like that. So I went from the bottom, from a struggling team, to the top. How was that time at Macclesfield? Was there any memorable moments while she was there? Well, Macclesfield was the time where it was a successful time at Macclesfield, because they were top of the league. They'd just sold the left back to Rotherham, I think it was, called Stuart Bimson. So I was. So you went straight to the first team. Replacement for him, yeah. So I was straight in the team, and in all honesty, I struggled at first, and that was purely because it was my first experience of a team that were really at the top of the league. Who, when you're at the top, every single team want to beat you, and there's no easy games then. Yeah. Because you're going everywhere and people expect you to win, and everybody is looking at you. For instance, like Stockport last season, and it's their big game, so they raised the game. So I struggled a little bit at first to find my feet, but I've always believed in my own quality as a player, and my own attitude was right, so I worked really hard. We won the league that season, but was refused promotion because of the ground. The ground wasn't up to standard, even though I think Chester was sharing it at the time, and they were playing in the league. So the league allowed Chester to play there, but they wouldn't allow Macclesfield to get promoted. Do you think that would that held you back slightly in a way, or? No, not really, because the season after we just won the National League. We didn't let that affect us in any way as a team. The team had a lot of momentum. We didn't just win the league, we was winning sort of like county cups. They were in the Cheshire Cup, they were in the Stafford Cup, we won both of them. There was like a league cup at the time, called the Bob Lord Trophy, they won that. And then there was always the National League champions would play the FA Trophy winners in like a Charity Shield game, and we won that. So we were winning a lot of things, we had an outstanding team, and then the next season we went on to win the FA Trophy, which fell away slightly in the league, but won the FA Trophy, and then the following season we won the league again.
Yeah.
So this time, and again with all them county cups and all them other little cups, I think in sort of 2.5 years at Macclesfield, I think we won, while I was there, 7 or 8 trophies.
Oh, okay.
Which is quite a successful period.
Yeah, Wikipedia didn't tell me that.
No, they don't go.
I think we need to get onto that and upgrade it just a bit. So after Macclesfield, I was just about to touch on winning trophies. You went to Halifax Town, where you had a pretty successful time.
Yeah, that move came about when we won the league with Macclesfield. We all went in one at a time to see the manager at the time, Sammy McElroy, and I just got the vibe. He said, the first thing he said to me was, "Are you interested in going full time? I don't think you are you?" And that to me sounded like he had doubts about me going, into the league with them. He put me an offer on the table, which wasn't much more than what they were paying me to be part time, and I had a job. I just got married, I had a mortgage.
What was you doing as a job on the side?
At the time, I was a warehouse manager for a company that did promotional stuff. So that was in Ashton. Yeah, it was quite a good job. It was really flexible.
Allowed you to play football as well.
They never stopped me from playing football. They actually encouraged me to, when I needed time off, it wasn't ever an issue, so it fitted in perfectly. But they, Macclesfield to me wasn't. It seemed like I wasn't one of the ones that they wanted to take into the league. And when he said that, I said, "Well, what are the options?" And he said, "Well, I've had an inquiry from Halifax. They'd just sold a couple of players to Halifax within the season. A lad called Kevin Hume and a lad called Darren Lyons, who used to be FC United's assistant manager. And they'd both sort of recommended me to Halifax as perfect for them for the following season. So within that conversation, he phoned the Halifax manager there, and then they agreed, terms of the transfer, and I agreed almost immediately to go to Halifax. We'd actually, second to last game with Macclesfield, we'd played Halifax at their ground, and they needed to win. They needed to beat us to keep up that season. We drew the game 2-2, so they needed to win the last game of the season to keep up, and they were playing Stevenage, which was another good team. They managed to beat Stevenage to stay in the National League. So the manager was saying, at Halifax, next season's going to be different. We've got a few players coming in, and you'll enjoy it. And I like going to Halifax, and played there a few times, and thought it'd be a good fit because a couple of the Macclesfield lads were already there, and they said good things about it. So I agreed to go, never expecting to sort of have the season that we actually had when I agreed to sign. Yeah.
So when you went there, was it the first season you got called up for the England C team?
Yeah. Well, I always say about that season. The 97-98 season is, if Carlsberg did seasons, that would be my perfect season.
Yeah.
There was a few goals that I'd always thought about as a player that I wanted to achieve, and I only achieved them in that season. And one was playing every game. And that was the only season I played
every single league game.
Every single game, yeah. Another one was to score more than 10 goals in a season.
From left back?
I played left wing back in that season.
Still a good.
And obviously, I knew about England C, but I'd never, that wasn't a goal at the start of the season, because I thought at the time it always seemed like the majority of the players who were chosen for it were Southern-based players. But we had an unbelievable season. It was an absolute pleasure to play. We was going into games expecting to win. In pre-season, we played Huddersfield Town, who was sort of pushing Championship, one of the top sides, and we beat them comfortably. And we sort of suspected that we'd got the right blend, and you know we won the league quite comfortably that season. You know, and the England Sea experience was.
What was it like getting called up for England? Was it like a shock to you then? When how did you find out?
You in them days you got chosen to play in a game. It was like a north-west based National League side against the league below, so a representative side from the league below, and you went to that game, and that was sort of like narrowing it down to because England Sea only had one game that season, usually, and they'd have two at the most, sometimes one at home, one away, but we played in that game against the league below at Lee RMI, you know, and we beat them comfortably. Played really well on the night. Myself and Jeff Horsfield were from Halifax. Jeff was flying, leading goal scorer in the National League. All teams looking at him for a move, and we both got chose for the England Sea squad. So, you know, we were really excited and really looking forward to it. And it was a great experience. Yeah,
definitely. So after Worcestershire was there at Halifax. Sorry, you went to Wembley when you was there. What was that like? Or did you not? Is that right?
I went to Wembley with Macclesfield for the FA Trophy. I went to Wembley not with Halifax. I went to Wembley at the end of that season for the FA Trophy final to receive my England cap for playing in that England Sea game. I would like to mention that England Sea game because we beat Holland 2-1 and I scored the winner. So
you got a goal for England as well.
Yeah, it's still.
Is that one of your proudest memories?
Definitely in football. Yeah, it still makes me feel shivers down my back.
Yeah,
that feeling when I scored.
So what celebration did you have?
It was. I just grabbed hold of the badge. I just grabbed it and looked and thought, I can't believe I just scored for England. You know, and even though it was an England Sea game, it really didn't matter to me. My dad was there, my brother. They travelled down. It was at Crawley, so it was right at the bottom of the country. It took them 10 hours to get there, something like that, and it was just an unbelievable feeling that I'll never forget.
So yeah, once you finished at Halifax, you moved and played for a few clubs around sort of this area.
Yeah.
And if it was finished off with Curzon, Ashton, how old was you when you signed and were still playing at that point?
Yeah. Well, when I stopped playing for Halifax, that was, Halifax obviously went into the league because we won the conference that season, and I did stay because Halifax were far more enthusiastic about me. You know, going back into professional football. I think I was 28 at the time. Yeah. And they offered me a 2-year deal on money that was good enough to give up my job. Yeah.
So you played 2 years at football league level then?
Not 4.
4.
Yeah. So I had 1 year in the National League with Halifax.
Yeah.
And then 4 in the football league.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Sort of. There was many ups and downs in that time because Halifax, like every other lower level club, we won the league to go into the football league. The manager, who had worked miracles again with with a budget that wasn't anywhere near the sort of teams who were at the top of the National League. Halifax were never expected to win it that season, and in the period between us winning the league and the first league game back in the football league for Halifax, the manager left.
Yeah.
And again, that was because of off the field stuff, and that he wasn't being treated how he wanted to be treated. So that was all up in the air, and the player assistant manager took over as manager. But it was a strange time in what went on because. Just boardroom things that these clubs tend to tend to be a little bit. You don't, as a player, you don't really know what's going on. You just find it strange. Your manager's been sacked, even though he just won you the league. But we got on with it, and in this first season, I think we were 1 point from getting in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then a few different managers, a few comings and goings. A lot of the players who won the league with Halifax left. I think I was one of the last ones to leave. And then it was my first experience after that below sort of National League level.
So how old was you when you left Halifax?
I was 32.
32. Did you go back to working in Ashton then?
Well, yeah, that's, once I'd left Halifax, I was coming out of professional football, so it was the first time I didn't have a club to go to. So I still wanted to carry on playing. I wasn't one of these players who weren't interested in playing. I wanted to continue. I didn't want to go back to the old job of warehousing. I'd started to develop an interest in coaching. So my first port of call was Droylsden. I sort of sent a letter out to the local clubs, and Droylsden came back, invited me in. And when I spoke to their chairman stroke manager, Dave Pace, he offered me a year deal, so I signed that, and I was there. I stayed there for a full season at Droylsden.
Yeah, so I would ask you if it was one of these teams, but I don't really trust Wikipedia anymore, so what happened next?
From Droylsden, they wanted to keep me, but it was a different experience. I'd been lucky enough to stay at National League level or above for the whole of my career. I didn't particularly enjoy the time at Droylsden, so I moved to Mosley, again with a good set of lads. Ali Pickering was manager at the time. A lad called Jason Beckford was assistant manager, who I'd known from days years ago when we was at City together, training together. And I spent half the season at Mosley, and then I started to develop a few knee problems. My knees were swelling up a lot after games or after training sessions, and it was making it difficult to walk and stuff. So I just had them checked out, and scans revealed that sort of all the cartilage had worn away, and they recommended I either stop playing or I had a growth of cartilage, so take some cartilage out of my knee, let it grow in a laboratory, and then put it back in.
Yeah.
I didn't fancy that.
Yeah.
I didn't fancy that, so...
Doesn't sound great, does it?
No, so I decided to stop playing.
Yeah, was it just like whittling down the games at that point then?
Yeah, well, I just cut it off. I just stopped playing altogether from Mosley. I told Mosley I was giving up on medical advice, so I stopped playing. I stopped playing for about 2 or 3 months.
Just couldn't stay away from it.
Yeah, and then I just thought, well, I'll just go even lower, and just play. Yeah. I missed it. I wanted to carry on playing, so I just thought I'll just tone the training down, so I won't risk overdoing things. I'll just sort of play in games and really be careful of training. But similar to Paul McGrath, where he never really trained, he just cycled and things like that, exercise bike to keep his fitness up. So I signed for ABA.
Yeah.
And I played about 5 games for ABA, and then Mosley found out I'd started playing again, so they recontacted me and said, well, if you're going to play, come back to us.
Oh, did you go back to them then?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I explained, I said I don't want to train, I can't train.
Yeah.
And they said, well, that's fine, just come back to us, and we'll sort that out. So I re-signed for Mosley. And then they started to ask me to train, and then they were training on an AstroTurf, the old AstroTurf with a sand base, and I just said I can't do it. So I felt that they'd misled me a little bit. So I actually phoned Gary Lowe at Curzon and said, you know, I want to carry on playing.
What level were Curzon at the time when you?
In the Northwest Counties.
Yeah. Okay.
So there was about 3 or 4 months left of the season, and I said I want to carry on playing. I've got issues with training. Mosley have just messed me about really. They said I didn't have to train as much, but then they told me they want me every session, so I'm available if you want me. And he said, yeah, come down. So
how long did you spend here?
Just the rest of that season. Yeah, to the end of that season, I think I played about 12, 14 games, something like that. And you know, I'd made a decision by then that was going to be it.
Yeah, you hung up the boots at the end of that year.
Yeah.
So how did you transition from your playing career, obviously, to where we are now? Because you went through all the ranks, all that Curzon, you've managed women's teams, youth teams.
Well, when I came out of Halifax and I joined Droylsden, I started to think about the coaching side of it. So I set up, first and foremost, I set up my own soccer school. I ran it at a school up in Hurst Cross near Ashton United's ground, and it had a little sort of half a pitch astroturf, and then it had some grass pitches around it. So I started to do that, and it became quite successful. Every Saturday morning I was getting sort of between 60 and 80 children coming down and playing, and I really took to it, and I found it enjoyable, and I felt the kids found it enjoyable as well, and they developed. One of our now coaches in our juniors, Luke Davenport, he was one of the first to come. One of our possible first team players this year, Gary Lowe's son Benito, he was there as well from a young age. He joined, you know, and I seem to have a knack of being able to transmit over to children how you know how to develop as a footballer. And the job I got when I came out of Halifax was working for Tameside Sports Development. They put me as a development officer, dealing with children who were struggling at school a little bit, dealing with the ones who were disruptive in their PE classes and disruptive in the classes.
Would you say that's what you was like as a kid, so you could reflect on how to get
possibly,
away from
yeah, possibly. I never sort of disrupted the class. I just had sort of like something in me that just said I was going to be a footballer and nobody else was going to tell me different. Never made it difficult for anybody else in the class.
He wasn't a troublemaker.
No. But you know, these kids, I seem to be able to get them thinking sort of differently and challenging them, and I did affect quite a few of them in a really positive way. And it was through table tennis. It's through football, and Tameside did hand rewards out to them children. They sort of give them free swimming passes and stuff like that. So I was going into the class, you know, into schools dealing with 4 or 5 children who couldn't be in a big class, and trying to get them behaving a little bit better, you know, not swearing at the teachers, things like that. And it seemed to work, you know. So that was my job. And then it was my sister just said to me one day, she said, I've been speaking to somebody from Curzon Ashton who she's known for years. She knew his family, and that was Jimmy Newall.
Obviously vice chairman now.
Vice chairman now. Yeah, at the time I think he was just helping Gary Lowe out as one of his coaches, and he just said, Curzon are looking for a football development officer to head up their new stadium that's being built down on the Moss. Would you be interested? And straight away I said yes, I would be interested, because I wanted to be involved in sport, which I was at the time with Tameside, but to be involved with just football, is far more beneficial and more attractive to me. So I went and met Harry Twamley and Harry Galloway. The stadium was being built at the time, so I met them in a pub that was close to the old stadium, and that's gone now as well. And they just laid out the plans of what was going to happen down here, and said, would you be interested in having the role of developing the football side of the club? And I thought it was perfect, so I agreed to do it pretty much straight away.
That's how it all began.
Yeah, so that would have been back in 2004.
Yeah.
And the stadium opened in 2005.
So you've been here ever since sort of like the duration of our time here as well. You've always been at Curzon. But when did you start taking coaching, I would say more seriously, but like realise you could progress and like affect the older sort of players as well?
Well, when I first started, it was all about developing community usage of the pitch, and then supporting our junior chairman, Wayne Selko, who's now, chairman, to make the club as strong as possible in terms of our juniors. And I really focused on that. I focused for possibly around 5 years on making the juniors grow, sustaining everything else that we had, linking with local businesses and local schools, and getting as many people basically to use the pitch. And as I had a young daughter, Emily, who was expressing interest in football, so the more she came down, I set up a junior girls section. We was getting around 40-50 girls coming down training, so I set some teams up, we put them in the league, and my own daughter was really taking to it, and she looked like she had a talent for it as well, so that sort of pushed me towards the girls / women's side. When we came to the stadium, we did have a women's team who were at the time called Oldham Curzon, and they were sort of a half relationship between Oldham Athletic and Curzon Ashton. But when the stadium opened, sort of everybody realised that Oldham actually didn't have any involvement in the team at all. Yeah. And they were at a very good standard. They was in the Northern Premier League, which was sort of like where our men's team are at the moment. The only league above it was the National League, and the likes of Arsenal and Everton were in that.
Already, yeah.
So in our ladies' league there was Manchester City and Newcastle and Aston Villa, and I started getting drawn to that because little Curzon Ashton was going up against these big sides, and could we match them? And with my own daughter being interested in football as well, it sort of made me even more attracted to that side of the developing of our club. So the manager left, like a man called Dave Ryan, who he worked at Manchester United, and he used to bring a lot of the players from Manchester United girls at the time who were just basically playing for Man United till they're 16, and then they had no ladies team, so they had nowhere to go, so he would bring them here. So that's where. So
was you manager of like the women's team?
I was, yeah. For only for about just over 12 months.
Yeah. What year did you finish doing that?
I can't remember what year it was.
So like from that, did you move from their section, like the women's section, like did you move back across to like the younger kids? Or?
Well, I was always involved in all sections.
Yeah.
The men's side of it is really the only side where I wasn't really involved, but on a weekly basis I was speaking to Gary Lowe, the manager, I was speaking to his coaches, I knew a lot of the players, I knew players from other teams, so I was talking to them without really being involved in it, but I got over involved really with the women's side because of the challenge of a small club playing against these big names, and in the end it was the chairman, Harry Twamley, who said, listen, you're spending far too much time and energy trying to sustain that when really other parts of the club are suffering because you're not concentrating on that. And that's why I had to step down as manager. Yeah, Wayne Selkell actually helped me out for a season as assistant manager. You know, and I was driven to beat the likes of Manchester City. It would drive me wild. That.
Did you get any wins against the big clubs?
Yes, yeah. We got to a stage where we were really competitive in the league. By the end of the season, we beat Manchester City in the County Cup semi-final, and then we played a lesser team in the final and beat them about 14-0 in the final. We had a really good team with some really talented players. We also had gained a new FA launch where they brought like academy girls here, so it was like the FA talent centre for the north, you know, for this area, which was quite a big thing. We had that for 2 seasons, and there was a lot of talented players, and it would have really kicked our ladies section off. But when everybody else saw that all the best players were coming here, Manchester United decided that they would like something like that. And when the FA thought about should Curzon Ashton have it or Manchester United have it, it was a no-brainer. We lost it to Manchester United, and they've had it ever since.
Yeah.
And that's, my daughter was in that, and then when it went to Manchester United, she went with it, kind of thing. So
she's over in America now, am I right?
Yeah. So she continued playing for United. She had a successful time there. She had a season with Liverpool, and then she was offered a scholarship to America, and she's been there for 3 years now in America.
Yeah. So when you had to take that step back from the women's football, where'd you go from there?
Well, I started again. Like I say, I never lost track of the juniors. The juniors have always been part of my role, where I coach the youngest age group. So I get them at 4, 5 and 6, and I develop them over a 12 to 18 month period into teams, run them for a year, and then pass them on to somebody else. So we've done that now for the oldest age group now is under 15s. They were my first age group that I set them up at under 7s.
So you already set like the foundations for what the club's building for?
Yeah, so for the last sort of 11, 12 years, I've set up every single team at the foundation, you know, at the under 7s age group. So all them players within that, you know, once they move on from me, there is some who will leave, there's some new ones who come in, but there'll be several players in each age group that I sort of brought to the club. And a good thing about it is that we don't hand leaflets out. We've never had to hand leaflets out. It's all through word of mouth. They come down the Monday and Wednesday, 4 or 5 year olds, and it's because somebody said, oh, the way they do it at Curzon is special. You know, the children take to it, they get to understand it, they're challenged about the correct things at the correct time. They've not got any pressure on them. The parents are educated as well.
So that's something you're really proud of as well.
It's something that would be really difficult to let go of. I think I'll be always doing it.
Yeah. Even now, whilst you're first team manager.
I still do it. Yeah. I still do it. I'm just in the process of setting up the new under 7s team.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about the on a Sunday morning when I come down to do the matches. It's the first ever match. I tell all the parents, please video the first ever match that your son or daughter plays in, because they're running off the pitch, they don't know how to take throw-ins, they don't understand goal kicks. It's quite comical, but it's amazing to see within a month that they understand all them things, and they start gaining an unbelievable knowledge of the way to play football. Yeah. And all the parents do acknowledge, if they come down to Curzon, that they've got a great sort of foundation to move on, and ideally they're not all going to make footballers, but I do say to them, your son might be coming here for the first time, and he might be meeting his best mate for life through football, and he might be best man at his wedding.
Yeah.
You know, he might, they might go on to do, spend a lifetime together and grow up together, and it's, football's an incredible thing that it can
brings
do
people
that.
Together, yeah.
It does, yeah.
So we'll talk about the first team now. So how did you get involved originally?
Well, it was when people started to mention about the opportunity of maybe progressing, and challenging me more to do, to step up and not just take junior teams. I have to say it was one of our directors, John Clayton, who pushed it the most. He challenged me. Our youth team, our under-18s, had a small bit of success, but we felt that it should be doing better. So that was the first point of him saying, run the youth team. Let's see how you can do when you run it. So I accepted it, and again it was something that I just took to, and I just felt, the league was a good league. The standard of the clubs we're playing against was a good standard. There was some big clubs in it. Fylde have always been in it, Altrincham, Chester, and I really enjoyed it. And I put a team together, and my first ever league game was against Chester at home, and we lost 3-0. And I remember John Clayton saying to me, Chester aren't one of the better teams in this league. They're all better than that. So I thought, I didn't get worried. I thought, oh, that's brilliant. So the challenge is there. That season, Chester won the league. They were the best team in it. We came second.
Yeah.
And then, ever since that point, there was a rivalry between us and Chester for the next 5-6 years, where we've been in the top 3 every year. And Altrincham have been in it a couple of times.
Still down to this season as well, because the league went down to the last game against them.
Yeah. Every year, their manager's been the same manager all over the years. A lad called Callum McIntyre, who does a fantastic job at Chester.
Yeah.
And it has been a great rivalry over the last sort of 5-6 years that we've been challenging each other, and they've won some and we've won some. And when that success came with the youth team, it was John Clayton again saying, well, if you can do it with the youth team, why don't you do it with the reserves? So I said, well, yeah, okay. So I stepped up to the reserves, and we won the league, and we lost the cup final the next season to win the league and cup double, and then I think as this success and this consistency of winning games for the youth team and for the reserves, because I was running both teams at the time, I think a number of directors were then saying he should be involved in the first team. That John Flanagan had come in with Ian Neverson. They'd had the promotions, and
was you part of the management team then when they
No.
No. Okay. So the first time you
again,
came into the first
all the time I've been here, I've spoke to to Gary Lowe, to John Flanagan, and spoke football and spoke players, but never directly involved until while John was having his success. He had the 2 promotions in the 2 seasons. He was having a number of coaches. John and Nev were never coaches. They managed. And they always wanted a coach to do the training. So eventually, after 3 or 4 coaches had been and gone, I think it was pressure from the club saying, well, if Mark's doing this with the 18s, with the reserves, you've got to use him and see if he can do it at first team level. And obviously, with each challenge that was put in front of me, I wanted to succeed at it. I've had a thing in me from being very young where if somebody challenges me, I want to step up. So the first team opportunity came, didn't have to think twice about it. I passed the reserves on to my assistant because that would clash. I knew I could continue to do the under-18s because I wanted that connection with the under-18 players so that I knew who was coming through. But I started to coach the first team, and at first it was a little bit difficult. One or two players who'd been there a while did question me, but if you're organised and you're 100% behind what you're doing, if somebody challenges you, you can back up what you're doing. And that's what I've always been able to do. You know, if I get challenged, I will have an answer for why, what, when, where, and why I'm doing it. You know, so the fact that I was taking the training sessions for the first team just made me more hungry to want to progress. And then people did start jokingly saying about becoming manager. You know, I was 100% behind John Flanagan, and I always was right up to the very end. And
so what was it like when you found out, like, you was asked to become?
It's difficult. It was difficult because, you know, I had, and I'd been honest with John, and I had said previously, I said, John, when you step down or you move upstairs or whatever you do, I do want the job. I will want the job. And he used to just jokingly say, oh, you don't want this kind of pressure, you don't want these where you can't sleep, and you don't want your summer's ruined and stuff like that. You know, but I said, I think I do. You know, I really believe that I do. I want to go at it because it's just the right progression for me in terms of what I've done at this club. I feel, and I wasn't in any way thinking that it would happen overnight. You know, it was sort of a long-term thing of John had earned the right to, you know, for his success over his 7 years, and I never expected sort of it to end so sort of surprisingly for everybody. I was as much surprised as anybody else was. So when the offer was made to take the job, the first people, I didn't ring them because I felt it was still a little bit too raw. I sent them a message and said, I've been offered the job, I hope you understand, I can't turn it down, I am going to take it, and you know, I wish you both well in the future. And that's how it worked. I couldn't turn it down. You know, you think that Gary Lowe was in post as manager for 11 years. John Flanagan was in manager for 7, almost 8 years. If I said no, I might have never got the opportunity to do it.
No, it's understandable.
So if I'd have said no when they asked me, they would have had to get somebody else in. They might have been in for 7 or 8 years, so I would have lost that opportunity. So I felt I had to say yes.
So when you first took over, I'm right in saying the first few games were quite tough, weren't they? We weren't playing bad football, but the results, we couldn't get over the line and stuff.
They'd been, you know, the number of years that we've been in this division, you know, the National League North, there's been a sort of decline in terms of we'd got less points each year, we'd scored less goals, we'd conceded more, so there was a trend that we were starting to struggle. Obviously everybody knows about Curzon and about people saying we're a small club with a small fan base, with a small budget, you know, and with the 18s and with the 21, it was the same with the ladies. You know, you're a small club, but ultimately it's 11v11. You know, John had grown very frustrated that he knew that he wanted to bring players in, but he felt he couldn't because he couldn't, you know, afford them. I would have the same problems, you know, got the same amount of money, but I just felt, you know, I had ideas of a different way of doing it. You know, John had kept the same players over a number of seasons, and I felt that we needed to refresh it.
Yeah, which we've definitely done this year, because I think there's only 4 or 5 players have remained from last season's squad.
Yeah.
There's a lot of new faces, but we've also had academy graduates come through. Is this the fresh approaches to go with the youth?
Well, it's not going with the youth. It's going with a slightly different age of players.
Yeah.
If you look at the majority of teams who are successful in leagues at every level of football, the average age will be around 27, 28.
Yeah.
When I said I had my Carlsberg season, I was 28, because you're at the sort of, you've been through everything you need to go through and you're at the peak of your powers. What I've done is just bring that age level down, and I've got to get 23-year-old, 22-year-old playing like 27, 28-year-olds, offering them the opportunity to play at this level, and then challenging them week in, week out to play to the maximum of their ability. So we've managed to get a squad together who we feel are going to be competitive in this league, but we won't truly know until the games start. Yeah,
definitely. So what would you say your aims, not just for this season, but long-term in management? What do you want to achieve?
Well, we spoke last season, and I was always saying the next game, 3 points is the next game, and I won't get away from that, is that long-term aims are very difficult, but if your short-term aims are realistic, then you'll achieve your long-term aim. So we've got together a group of players who I believe are capable of challenging in this league. My long-term aim this season will be to get more points in this league than Curzon have ever achieved before. The cup competitions, as our chairman rightly said, are attractive in terms of every non-league club now know that if they have a run, it's a great boost. So basically, what I believe, what everybody should believe, is every game matters.
Yeah.
So every single game we want to win. Not many teams achieve that, if any. So we've got to be realistic about it, and we've got to understand that every other team that's going to be in our division, or we're playing the cup competitions, they want to win every game as well. So we strip it back and we go on the training pitch, and everything we do at the club, from the players turning up for the first day of pre-season, we have to try and do everything right, so that them players have no excuses about what they're trying to achieve, what we're trying to achieve as a group, and that they fully understand what it'll take. And we'll be drumming that into them every single session, every single time that they're with us, and we'll also be drumming it into them through the WhatsApp group and through every social media channel we can, to make them feel special and make them understand that we're an ambitious club.
Yeah.
I'm an ambitious manager who wants them to achieve their potential.
Yeah, so it is pre-season. I've kept you for over an hour now. We're just finished. If you've got a message that you can give to the fans or the people listening about this season.
Yeah, of course. I'm a fan myself of Curzon now. I just hope that all the fans who follow us are enjoying what's happened over pre-season. Yourself, Jordan's been a massive part of that in putting together the videos, and we're all going to be working hard to make this club an attractive club to come to. New chairman, new vice chairman, new manager, lots of new players who are going to be really exciting to watch as well. A real dynamic edge to how we play. Anyone wants to come down to training to watch these boys train. On Tuesday night was our first session, and for a first session of pre-season, we can't wait until the first games come along. So please come down, support.
Perfect.